I'm seated in a...
You're seated where?
I'm seated at UKZN campus in Pietermaritzburg. I'm borrowing somebody's office here.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I'd like to welcome you again. I know your talks are well attended. I know there's been a drop off in numbers, but today we've got a nice increase again. Thank you for agreeing at the last minute because you had a change in speaker to talk about this topic. I used ChatGPT 20 minutes ago, and it saved me at least 2 hours of time. It took me 5 minutes. I'll tell you what I did. I'm writing a motivation for somebody to get an award with somebody else. So this other person has written something, I wrote something, and I said to ChatGPT, look at these as a scientist, because this is for a science award, as a scientist, merge these two pieces. And we've got this beautifully written motivation. So it's my input, her input, it's now in one voice, and it would have taken hours. Right. So I'm really one of those people who is excited about ChatGPT. I know there are plenty of people that fear it, that think it's going to compromise scientific integrity, which it can if people will allow it. But if people have integrity, they won't allow it. Yeah. So I'm so glad you agreed to give us an introduction to ChatGPT today. So thank you so much. I'm handing over to you.
Super. Thank you very much, Colleen. And thank you, colleagues. Look, it's a pleasure to really speak to you about a topic that I'm quite passionate about. I just hope that you can see my screen. So now that you know what I look like, I'm going to try to share my screen. And I just pardon my technical abilities. It's been a long time since I've used Zoom. We use a thing called Microsoft Word. So I'm just trying to get my bearings on this software. So I just need you to inform me if you can actually see my screen. Now, I don't know
Not yet. You have to click that little green thing at the bottom.
Okay.
To share screen.
Let me just see. I got to get out of this. Sorry, I'm not even using my computer here. So this is.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Now, I just want to make
sure.
You
just have to open it up to your presentation because we're still seeing it in the edit view.
Okay. Can you? Well, you should be able to see this one. So I'm sharing the wrong screen. Let me just see. Can you see that? Can you see that? It's now in full screen mode, Colleen.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, right. So that's part one. Let me just see where we are. Okay, so folks, we're going to be speaking about ChatGPT, and I'm going to give you a sort of overview as to what this is about, and where we are at with the. I'm going to make sure the slides are working. Okay, yeah. And essentially, for years, there has been a sort of worldwide fear of artificial intelligence, what we call AI or artificial intelligence. I don't know if one can actually call it intelligence. There's huge debate around whether we can actually call it an intelligence or not, but look, I'm not going to get into that. That's not the kind of lecture for today. And its implications. Now, who sort of knew that, we'd be sitting here today talking about something like, I'm sorry, let me get this out of the way as well. Man, this is quite a mission. Okay, I hope that's not showing on your screen. Sorry. Oh. Right. So after months of dominating the internet with sort of AI, artificial intelligence generated images, by a program called DALL-E 2, DALL-E coming from Salvador, DALL-E 2. This so-called open AI, and I'll explain these terms to you. Open AI has continued to be all of everyone's social media feeds, thanks to a thing called ChatGPT-3. I'll explain that to you. A sort of chat bot. What's a chat bot? It's pretty much you are speaking to the computer. You prompt it with certain text, and it'll give you some replies. Many of you might have used this at some point, when you were searching for things like buying a product from IKEA or from Macro, and then you find out this prompt comes up and it says, can I help you? Please type your text in. And so that's called a chat bot pretty much. So it's not exactly the catchiest name. and could easily be the title of a random computer component or vague legal reference to something. But GPT-3 is actually the internet's best known language processing artificial intelligence model. So now we must remember that since its release, it has been banned in schools, universities, etc., utilized by Microsoft. Microsoft uses it to revolutionize its Bing search engine. I don't know if any of you actually use Bing. I do know that some people in the health sciences do use Bing. Bing is a fantastic search engine. It's similar to Safari or to Firefox or to Chrome, but it's a bit more smarter. It does a lot of smart things. The smartest one of the lot is is a search engine called Opera, where all these things are integrated. Everything is integrated. ChatGPT, your plagiarism software, all of it. So that for me is the best of the lot. My opinion, the best of the lot is Opera, but you could use Bing. So there was a lot of legal essays wrote, legal tests done. It wrote essays, it's done a whole lot of things in the beginning. So now the company has actually introduced a sort of paid version called ChatGPT 3 Pro. I'll talk about what that is just now. There's a paid version and there's a free version. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But before I get into this topic, you might be wondering, well, how is it that a musician like myself is into this technology and of what bearing is it? And as I pointed out, artificial intelligence, we were the first to be affected by the major technological revolutions that took place. I mean, I know you scientists will argue, but I can assure you that it was the musicians. Because at the end of the 19th century, music was pretty much a live event. You went to a big symphony concert or to an opera, you heard it live, and that was it. You appreciated it, paid for your ticket, and you went home, and that was it. End of story. From the start of the 20th century, we had the lovely Edison who invented the gramophone. So now what had happened was we could record the orchestra, and this now became available to us on a wax cylinder. And people at that time said, that's the end of story. That's the death of the orchestra. No more orchestras. We're now buying recorded music, and that's it. Think about the discussion today amongst musicians. What's the argument? Oh, the debt to music with the internet. We now have MP3 players. People are freely downloading. That's the end. So that discussion has been going on for a whole century. So musicians felt very threatened with these new technologies. Why am I telling you all of this? So when this thing called ChatGPT 3 was launched, which was at the end of last year, towards the end of last year, October last year, it was launched. Now, we had universities that all came out. There were three categories, I call them three categories of universities. There were those who were very apocalyptic, the end of the world. And they said, we're going to ban this thing. We're just banning this thing. It is going to give students to plagiarize. They're going to be copying stuff. This is unethical. This is not research. So that's what they did. They simply went and banned them. And one of our sister universities across the hill in Pretoria, I'm not mentioning names, decided we're going to just ban it. Then there were those, like the bit more progressive ones who said, let's just wait and see. You know, it's like these penguins who sort of test the temperature of the water in the ocean before they dive in. Let's see what the others are doing before we really get on board and do this. And then there's a type of university like the one I belong to, and I was heading this movement at my university. I simply said, nonsense, this is a new technology. It's there to be used like any new technology. Take it and run with it. So we are running with it. So you can decide what you want to do with it. And I'm going to show you the pros and cons. And then it's really up to you whether you want to use it or not. That's pretty much it. So you're going to hear a lot of discussion at the moment about a thing called Bard AI. Essentially, it's the same thing. Bard is sort of Google's competitor. What had happened was a company called OpenAI, open coming from open source, which means freely available to you, OpenAI, artificial intelligence. They launched this thing called ChatGPT. Now, I will explain that acronym for you just now. So they launched this product and it took the internet by storm. Everybody was raving about it. For me, I was lucky because I've got a son who's very technologically savvy. He's an electronic engineer and he's been dabbling in this for years, and his future father-in-law happens to be a very senior person who is doing a lot of the military tracking in a very famous country in the world that's got a lot of money. So he's looking at cyber warfare. And so when we mentioned this to him, he said, I can't understand all the fuss. We've been using this for 15 years already. So that came as a surprise to me here. I'm all excited. I found this new thing called ChatGPT-3 and it's taking me off. And this guy said, no, we've been using it for a long time. No fuss. We pretty much know where it's in. And so they gave me a sort of crash course as to how to use it. And I found this extremely, extremely powerful. And I'm going to recommend it to all of you. Just go and use it. So Google was a company that felt very threatened because the search engine that we all were using up until now has been Google. I mean, if you wanted to find anything, you simply went to Google, you punched it in, you got your information, and it gives you certain hits. You go and you get your links, etc. Get your information from Google, and you use scholar.google or whatever, follow the links, etc., etc. So Google was the go-to place. So essentially, we now have this thing called ChatGPT-3. What the heck is this thing? Essentially, it is Google, but it is Google on steroids. This is something that's an organism that can do stuff that Google can't do. It can't do it. It has the resources to do it, but it can't do it because it doesn't have a conversion that can allow it access to some of the things that ChatGPT can. So what does Google do? Because they saw this as competition, they launched their own platform called Bard, B-A-R-D. So I don't have a problem with anybody using ChatGPT or Bard or the Bing version, no problem at all. I just go and I bought the ChatGPT version. I pay $20 a month. It does all the things I needed to do. I am satisfied with it. I will deal with the legal and plagiarism issues, which I'm going to discuss with you, and I will show you the legit way of using it, etc., etc. Now, you must remember that this is an introduction lecture I normally do for my students at my place, and you can probably speak to your lecturers at your institution. I do 5 sessions on just GPT-3, on how we use it for research, how we write an article with it, how we write a thesis with it, how we write letters, how we use it for general communication, all of that kind of stuff. And it's exactly what Colleen had mentioned earlier. It will speed up your time incredibly, incredibly. That I can assure you. I put myself to a test and I wrote an entire research publication in 1 week. Last week I did that. I forgot I had a book chapter due, and the book chapter is due tomorrow. I started last week and the thing was finished, just using the resources at my disposal. I can show you how to do that, how I use it, and you can take from it what you want. Okay, so a lot of talking. A little bit about background. OpenAI was the company that started by this gentleman. I think all of you know who he is. He's not a guy from E.T. or from the Terminator. He's called Elon Musk, a Praetorian like myself. So he invested a lot of money into a platform that was called OpenAI. He wanted them as a competitor, and he wanted to try to solve a problem that Google wasn't addressing by, in other words, being interactive to somebody, like what I'm doing to you right now. I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to you in a language that you understand, using a language that you and I understand. I'm not a health scientist like you, so I can't use the technical jargon that you might be using in your discipline. However, I'm speaking to you in a language that you can understand, so-called academic discourse, you can understand. So what he wanted to do was design a system that speaks to the people in the language that they can and give them access. So he invented OpenAI, went up and they researched this, and they came up with a platform called Generatively Pre-trained Transformer. That's your GPT, Generatively Pre-trained Transformer. The chat part is simply like the chat, like I'm talking to you now, except you don't have a human being there, but I'm telling you now, this is on its way. They are going to have a robot that's going to do exactly what I'm doing, seated here, and it's going to be speaking to you the way I'm speaking to you. That's the next phase. At the moment, you're simply typing text and it's giving you responses that way. But it's already at that phase, and I can guarantee you there, my son has already written source code to do that, to have somebody that looks like a human right on the other side that's actually talking to you. So it's instructing you. Now, why version GPT-3? Firstly, obviously, we started like any software. GPT was the first version. Then we had GPT-0, then GPT-1, GPT-2, and now we had GPT-3, and we are on version GPT-4, which is the paid version, the version I'm using. But you can get GPT-3 for free, freely downloadable, and you can use it. So how was this trained? How did this thing get training? How did we train all this? So a group of computer scientists sat down and they looked at the internet and they look at all of the available data that was on the internet. Now, you know, there's tons and tons of data. Think about every single thing that's digitized. When you go and use your Scopus or your Web of Science or your Elsevier, or you're using whatever platform you use, almost everything is digitized, including your MasterCard, your business cards, almost everything is digitized. So they went on and they looked at this and they trained ChatGPT using 1.7 billion pieces of data. So almost everything that was available on the web, up to including 2020. And I would like to repeat that, up to including everything up until 2020, December 2020 is the cutoff. So if you are trying to find something that was published after 2020, you're not going to get it on GPT-3. You're going to have to go back to Google and go look at it. Or there's another nifty piece of software which I have that can allow you to do that, to look at things that are really current and up to date. I've got a little patch that you can use to bring you up to speed. It's like my version of GPT-3, that's like a fast track version to bring you up to speed where we are right now. If you need that, let me know and we can do a small session on that. It won't be long. That's about 15, 20-minute session. Anyway, so GPT-3 is a generative pre-trained transformer. What is it doing? It is a state-of-the-art language processing model. In other words, it looks at your language and it structures searches according to your language. Think about the times when you were doing like an Amazon search and you might punch in something. Say, I'm looking for a book on hematology. So the next time you go to Amazon, it'll automatically suggest books on hematology for you. Say, this is a new text. And so it gives you so it's already intelligently learning how you program. And as you start to punch in text, it starts to learn the way you are using language, and it starts to generate responses based on your language. Now, this is where the trick is. Because whenever you are speaking to a computer, you got to be really specific. You cannot speak to it like the way you're speaking to a human being. For example, you can't say, somebody just entered my office. You got to be very specific. Somebody entered my office with their right leg wearing a white pants and a black shirt, and they got a green pair of socks. They opened the door with their right hand, and the door is 3/4 open. So you got to give it very, very specific. And I'm pretty sure all of you coming from the health sciences will know that. In your disciplines, you've got to be extremely picky about microscopic detail. So you got to be as specific as possible when you are using ChatGPT. As specific as possible. You can't leave anything for doubt. Okay, you got to go there. So we now already at version 4, ChatGPT 4. That's what we are using, and all of us are there. So ChatGPT is pretty much important for us because it is the way to go. It is the future. And I'm telling you now, despite what anybody is going to tell you, take it from me. Take it from me. This is the future. It is here. So I would encourage you to get on board right now. It is a tool just like Google, but on steroids. That's what it is. It is a tool that we're using. So it is not cheating in any way. It's not doing anything illegal. It's simply accessing data that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to access. Now, you might have heard of a gentleman called Julian Assange. If you haven't heard about him, he's a gentleman that hacked a database and he found certain pieces of information that he put out on WikiLeaks, called WikiLeaks. He put this on. That's simply because he was tapping into a database that others didn't have access to, and he could tell you some of the secrets that were going on in governments. They could tell you this. Now, we've known this because recently what's just happened. A gentleman by the name of Seymour Hersh, he happens to be a reporter for the New York Times, well, one of the big reporters in the world, very reliable. He discovered that it was the US government that had bombed the pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline. Everybody's in denial, but he's got evidence, and he says he's got the proof. So he's definitely tapping into an aspect of the search engine as to access to information that is available there. So that's what this is. It's very advanced, very advanced. And it's, as I said, it's using 1.7 billion pieces of data. It's using a language model at the moment, a language model. It's got a name. The model is called Da Vinci. We don't know why Da Vinci, but it's called Da Vinci. That's the model name that it's got. So if you find this name sometimes, you might just think, well, yeah, that's what it does. So let's look at what is ChatGPT. What is this thing and how does it work? Now, tools like ChatGPT or other artificial intelligence tools are nothing more than what we call a large language model. It's a large language model. It's a model based on language. And I'm going to explain the two types that we have just now. Now, having been getting lots of headlines recently, ChatGPT is an app created for a profit company called OpenAI. Now, as I said, you've got other people that are competing on this platform as well. Now, how do they work? Now, unlike a normal search engine like Google or Safari or one of the ones that you use, Yahoo, right, which searches and then gives the results using information that's already been created. They give you certain hits. These are the things that we have. Now, a large language model, most of them, and ChatGPT is the one that you use, are making new content by predicting the word that is most likely to come next. For example, you might be saying, oh, I can feel a rumble in my stomach and I'm feeling very bloated right now. And I think I might be exiting this room to go to the, it's probably going to tell you, it's going to give you a suggestion to go to the bathroom, to go to the toilet, to go and blow your nose. It's going to suggest text to you. So it's based on a very huge data set. Now, the danger here, this is where people are getting upset with ChatGPT. It also includes conspiracy sites, it includes racist information about military stuff. It's got a whole lot of stuff in it. Now, that's where the big danger is. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could be used for dangerous purposes. So they are designed to model human language and use mathematical models to predict text as to what's the next word and what's the most likely outcome. So that's what. So keep in mind, they do not think. ChatGPT does not think. It simply predicts what's going to come next. And they do not understand also. And you'll find very often when you do this, it doesn't understand. It's simply giving information that is already available on the web. So you have to decide what is the best information. Now, what are its challenges? So if one looks at its challenges, and I've just got about 4, there's plenty of other challenges, it is often wrong or sometimes incorrect, or there is a mix of inaccurate and accurate information. You as a scholar need to go and check what is incorrect or correct. Now, I had an experience once where I was talking about Plato's cave. Plato, one of the big philosophers in Greece, Plato's cave, which is quite commonly used in philosophy today. And when I looked for a reference, it referenced for me Gramsci, who's another philosopher. And I'm like, hold on, this is wrong. I know that Gramsci was not the guy who wrote Plato's cave. So I went and I checked the source that ChatGPT was giving. And lo and behold, it was Gramsci, but in that article, it was Gramsci referring to Plato. That was what was missing. So it referenced it it referenced it from the secondary source, not from the primary source. So go and double check that. So the information that Google from ChatGPT is doing is all stuff that's on the web, but it gives it back to you in a version that is so convincing. You think that, man, this is the truth. That's just it. This has got to be the truth. It's like when we hear the American president speak. When we hear him speak, he convinces us that everything he's saying is the truth. But we know, if you really read into the evidence, that, well, it's a lot of the stuff is questionable, what he says. That's how it is. So it gives you this very convincing argument. So we also have the free versus the fee version. Yeah, it's free, plus you can also pay. The content it is using could be biased. You have to assess its bias. And then there are also privacy concerns. Big privacy concerns. What is the company doing with the data? What is ChatGPT doing with the data that you put in? Keep in mind, when you are doing research in your lab or in experiments with a human and you publish your article with all of your hard work and you put this on the web, ChatGPT now has access to your article, your intellectual property. What is it doing with your information? So we don't know that. Okay. So the possibilities, what can it do? It can help and give simple explanations. For example, I am not a health sciences person, and I have certain medical conditions, which I am trying to deal with. In other words, I was blessed when God put me on the earth. He put me with a double dose of sugar and starch. So I'm diabetic, which means I can't take anything that's got a lot of sugar, a lot of starch in it. I've got to be careful. So it will take the technical jargon that you have in your discipline, and it will simplify it so that somebody like me, who is not a health sciences practitioner, can understand what this is about. It can take huge philosophical discussions and explain it to you the way you want. You can say, please explain this concept to me in the same way that you'd explain it to a grade 3 or a grade 4 learner at school, and it'll give you an explanation. Plus, you can ask it to explain with an example. You say, I don't understand the concept of the black hole according to Stephen Hawking. Please explain this to me. It'll give you an explanation. And it says, could you give me an example of what it is? It will give you the example. So it can also provide a sample text. It can create a list of keywords, possible search terms. It can give you correct information that isn't controversial and so on. So that's pretty much where we're sitting with it. So essentially, it is a large language model. I told you. A language model is a type of machine learning. It's a machine model trained to conduct a probability distribution over words. So to put it simply, it's a model that tries to predict the next most appropriate word to fill in the blank space in a sentence or in a phrase or even in your software programming. It tries to predict. If you're writing source code, it'll predict, do you want to do this? For example, in a sentence that sounds like this, Jenny dropped by the office for the keys, so I gave them 2. Now there's a part missing. I'll read that again. Jenny dropped by the office for the keys, so I gave them 2. Now this is an example of a good model that will determine the missing word. And here it'll determine, the missing word in this sentence is probably a pronoun. So the relevant things is like Jenny, so it's probably the pronoun that's here, maybe she or her, and it'll fill that in. So language models are a fundamental component of natural language. That's why we call it NLP, not neuro-linguistic programming, but natural language processing, natural language, because they allow machines to understand, to generate, and analyze human language we're using. It allows us to analyze what we want and gives us a response. Now, they are mainly trained using a large, very large data set. So I can assure you that most of your health sciences data is already available on the web. It's already there. You just got to know where to search for it, such as a collection of books, of articles, you name it, it's all there. Okay, so that's essentially where we are there with that one. So now if we look at what can these large language models do? I'm going to talk here. This might be a bit over the top for you, but just bear with me for the next 2 slides. Okay, language models are used in a variety of tasks that we have, of natural language tasks, such as speech recognition. It recognizes speech. It recognizes machine translation and text summarization. Important. It can take an entire text for you, entire text. And the maximum that I've summarized is up to 3,000. I think the capacity is about 3,000 words, and it summarized that to me into 250 words. So it can do summaries of articles for you, huge chunks of stuff, it can summarize that. And I've got other nifty pieces of software that can go even further. For example, if you use a private ChatGPT, it can extract for you, what is the theoretical framework used in the study? What is the sample size of the study? Where are the participants from? What are the flaws in the study? And it'll pick that stuff up. So what is it used for? It's used for one, for content generation. Content generation. So let's say, for instance, you want to do research and you are stuck for generating content in anything. Let's look at the post-trauma suffered by individuals in Pietermaritzburg, post-COVID trauma suffered by people in Pietermaritzburg. And it'll ask you, please generate some content. So it'll generate content based on that. So it's one of the areas where language models shine the brightest because it can generate content for you. That's the good part. It generates content, but you need to check the validity of the content. Then it also deals with parts of speech tagging. You know, those language models have been widely used to achieve like state-of-the-art results on parts of speech. That's good. Also, for question answering, you might ask it a question. And it'll give you answers like the way Google does. But here it's far more accurate. The language models can be trained to understand the questions and with or without the text given. Then it can do things like text summarization. It can take a text and it can summarize it for you. And it can use some and pick up the key words in the text. It can also do sentiment analysis. That's a language model is a good option for sentiment analysis tasks, as it can capture the tone of a voice and the semantic orientation of the text. Now, this is good for individuals who are actually looking at qualitative analysis, qualitative work that they're dealing with, looking at semantic analysis, look at how words are structured, the kind of way, the tone of voice, you can pick up things like that, which is beyond the scope of our normal thematic analysis when we do that in qualitative work. We tend to avoid the tone and all of the semantics. We sort of just look at the text itself. Okay. So it extends that. Then it also looks at conversational artificial intelligence. It's language models that are inevitably part of speech-enabled applications that require converting speech to text and text to speech. So as part of this conversational AI system, language models can provide relevant text responses for certain inputs that you have. Okay, for example, you might say, my thesis topic is looking at the underwear sizes of male gents between 35 years old and 45 years old. That's my study. It's a design study. Please generate possible research questions. It'll generate 4 research questions based on that. Or what suggests a theoretical framework for the study on male underwear garments. So it'll give you a theoretical framework or possible frameworks. That's what it does. Very advanced. It reads also code completion. Recent large-scale language models have demonstrated an impressive ability to generate code, computer code, and to edit it, to explain the code. However, they can complete only single programming tasks by translating instructors' codes or instructions. So these are just some of the few things that we have, and there's a whole host more. So when we talk about these language models, why is this important for you as a researcher? Why is it important? Because it's using 2 of the language models that you are using all the time. So the language models come in different types, and they can be put into 2 big categories. The one category is what we call statistical models, which is what you are using when you're doing quantitative work, or for those who are based on deep neural networks. So the 2 types we have, one is called statistical language model, and the other is called neural language model. So statistical language models are a type of model that uses statistical patterns. For example, when you're doing your analysis, it can do your analysis of data for you and make predictions about the likelihood of possible sequences of words, likelihood possible of things. So it uses something to calculate your n-gram possibility, but I'm not going to go on to n-gram. That's a whole different topic. And then it also uses neural language models. Neural language models, as the name suggests, uses neural networks to predict the likelihood of a sequence of words. These models are trained on large corpus of data, large corpus of data, and are capable of learning and identifying the structures of language. So those individuals who struggle with English as a first language or any foreign language, you might be struggling with it. This software is brilliant for you because it will polish up your English and simplify things, make things much more simplified. Now, to divert here on this presentation, I found that the presentation that was always delivered by our colleagues at Caprisa, Professor Abdul Salim Karim, I found them brilliant to listen to because he is able to take highly complex scientific processes and explain it in a language on television that I can understand. And that I found is brilliant. And that's what ChatGPT can do. It can take stuff that's highly complex and explain it to you in a way that would make your task very, very easy. So what can the LLM do? And I'm almost done with the heavy part of the lecture. So what can the models do? Well, while large learning models have been trained on a lot of data and can understand the natural language, it can understand the language you're speaking and generate human-like text. It can generate text that is very human-like. They still have certain limitations when it comes to tasks that require sort of reasoning and sort of general intelligence. They can't perform, I repeat, can't perform tasks that involve common sense things. For example, it's raining outside and you want to go outside without, a t-shirt on. It's a common sense thing. Or the understanding of abstract concepts and making inferences based on incomplete information. It can't do that. They also lack the ability to understand the world as humans do, as you and I do. They lack that ability and they can't make decisions or take actions in the physical world. So we'll get back to the topic of limitations later, but for now, I just wanted to explain to you how these large language models. So a little overview of this. This is just a quick overview. You don't have to focus too much on this. To summarize some of the key features, why would anybody want to use ChatGPT 3? And here I'm using the early version. Why would you want to use it? Firstly, It is a natural language processing technology. So it enables machines to understand human conversation and interact with people as if they were like humans. That's the one reason. The second one, it is a breakthrough in artificial intelligence that allows machines to interact with people in a more natural way. It also uses deep learning to understand conversations and generate intelligent responses. That's important for us in research. It is powered by OpenAI's GPT model, OpenAI, open source, which means various other applications will develop, and I've got tons of them that I can share with you that will assist you with your research. For example, to correct your grammar, to extend a sentence, to find good sources for you, to be able to improve your text. These are all models that are being modeled on OpenAI. There are people writing plugins for it already. Yeah, and I've got some of them, and I can send you a list if you want. They can be used to develop conversational artificial intelligence applications, such as chatbots or virtual agents. Now, it is also an important step in creating artificial intelligence that can interact with people in a more natural, in a kind of human-like way. It is a versatile tool that can be used to develop intelligent, interactive applications and so on, and it can create applications designed for customer service, e-commerce, for healthcare, all of that stuff. So this is quite powerful for you guys in the health sciences. Okay, and so now, is using ChatGPT cheating? And what about plagiarism? So these are the big questions that are being asked at the moment. Now, since there are many ways to use ChatGPT, the answer is whether using it is cheating. It depends. It depends what you would see as cheating. Although there are not yet new policies about use it per se, so using it like copy and paste or code that is created by ChatGPT, you're going to have to check this. I would say use it to generate ideas and expand your ideas, but simply do not, and I repeat, do not copy and paste into your assignment. Don't do that. You're going to have to authenticate it and formulate this in your own ways. And that's what I found to be the most powerful use of it. Don't cut, copy, and paste, because it already has models available. And as Colleen pointed out later, if you want to write a letter to the president of the country complaining about the power grid and what we call our power cuts, sorry, I don't use the word load shedding because load shedding means something else for me, but power cuts, it'll generate a letter for you in the form of a formal letter to a president. So it'll save you with all the unnecessary stuff you've got to learn, okay? Then plagiarism, if one looks at our policy on plagiarism at most universities in South Africa, it's defined pretty much as representing the words or the creative work or the ideas of another person as one's own without providing the proper documentation of the source. Now, those students who might want to point out that, words created by a tool like ChatGPT isn't a person. It is not, because there isn't an intent in the policy. So you're fine. So I would say always use it and check with your supervisor what is acceptable or not at your institution that would be construed, or sort of that would be seen as a violation of the academic dishonesty policy. And I can tell you now, there are huge claims being made by Turnitin, which is a text similarity software, that yes, it can detect ChatGPT. My answer to you is no, it can't. It can't. I tested it, it can't do it. There are other tools that come far closer, but certainly Turnitin, which is a text similarity, has got a long way to go before it actually does that, because there's very easy ways to fool. Anybody could fool Turnitin even before ChatGPT had come about. There are techniques that are available, and I'm not going to go into that here for you. That's beyond the scope of this link. So simply ask your supervisor. Okay, and then citation. If you are doing research about ChatGPT or other tools and using it, the topic will want to include, for example, then yes, cite it as a source, like in your APA or in MLA store. It's there, okay? If you're using ChatGPT 3, to help you with background research or create outlines or keywords, etc., you should likely check with your instructor or your class policies about that. I don't know the policy there, but generally there's ways around. You just want to get the ideas there or the analysis done, and you want to write this up pretty much using your own words. So essentially, this slide is quite redundant because I did explain this to you. With its 175 billion parameters, It's hard to narrow down what ChatGPT can do. It is incredible. The model is, as you would imagine, restricted to language. It can produce video, it can produce sound images, and I have it used for music composition. My next CD production, which is coming out in September this year, has been entirely created using ChatGPT 3. I've tested its limit on music composition and analysis. So you can hear what the product comes out. And for those of you who are in doubt as to what it can do, if you can get access to the Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam, every month they perform one composition that was created by artificial intelligence. The program that they're using is something called AIVA. Okay, that's comes from artificial intelligence, virtual assist. It creates a composition, a symphonic work, and it's performed by a live orchestra. So it's already being used in the live context in the world. It's not like it's something that's, okay, I'm going to skip this one here because this really is not so relevant for you. It's talking about pretty much, how ChatGPT really works, which you really don't know. This goes into another section altogether. So what are the benefits for you? What are the benefits for you using it? So to explain the advantages of ChatGPT for university staff and students, I will highlight how ChatGPT can streamline communication, it can reduce errors and provide personalized reforms. Firstly, it allows for faster development cycles as it can be used to generate training data quickly, very fast. It can generate natural sounding conversations, saving time, money, etc. It can also be used to drive customer service and conversations, improving customer experience. It can be used to automate responses. It can be used to personalize conversations and so on. So the disadvantages of ChatGPT, number one, the cost. It can become very expensive going forward because it's selling at about $20 at the moment. You can use the free version for now, and the free version has got most of the features. Okay, it's got lack of customization. You can't customize it much. There are privacy issues with ChatGPT. It is a black box. And because it is a large-scale artificial intelligence system, it can be difficult to understand or control the data. Then the issue of accuracy. You have to check accuracy. Simply do not take anything you read on the internet as being accurate. You go and you check it. Even if it's in Google, your task as a researcher is to go and check for accuracy. Then there are issues about data security. Whatever stuff you're going to be stored in the cloud, who's going to get to use your data, who can take your stuff and expand on it, etc., etc., etc. So there's a whole host of issues there which we need to be aware of for ChatGPT. So some examples that we use ChatGPT 3 for. What are some of the cases we use? We use it like for essay writing. You want to write an essay, it can do that. It can do translation. It can write music for you. It can write poetry. It can generate art for you. It can write code, programming code it can write. It can solve maths problems, physics problems, and so on. It can extract data from a text. You put the text in either as a PDF or a text document. It can extract data from that. It can do a whole host of other things, and I can show that to you at some other point. So the impact for university students, I'm not going to read this for you. If you really want, I'm going to share the slides with Colleen, and she can share this with you. If you want to read a bit more about the impact for university students and supervisors, there are some of the articles that you can read on technology and artificial intelligence to just be up to date as to where is the discussion right now on ChatGPT and using it. You can go and have these things. Go check. They're fairly easy to read articles. And if you really want to, and if you are a bit lazy, simply take these articles, download them, and get a summary, get ChatGPT to summarize the articles for you. It'll summarize it for you in 250 words and give you the gist of it. It saves you reading the entire article. Okay, then the issue of ethics. This is a big concern for us, ethics. Artificial intelligence and ethical concerns go together like fish and chips or Batman and Robin or whoever you want, Superman and Supergirl. So when you put technology like this in the hands of the public, the teams that make them are fully aware of the many limitations and concerns, right? Because the system is trained largely using words from the internet. It can pick up on the internet's biases, stereotypes, general opinions, and so on. That means you'll occasionally find jokes or stereotypes about certain groups or political figures, depending on what and who you ask. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Ethics is quite an issue. So I'm on to my second to last slide, and I'm going to play for you here what an astrophysics professor had to say, because I see we've got a bit of time. I hope you can hear the audio on your end, and I hope it plays on my end. So let's give this a try. Okay.
Year, the median score was 75.6%. So ChatGPT performed worse than a typical Columbia non-science major undergraduate, but it's not a huge way off. So what do we make of this? Well, I guess I'm a little surprised, but also somewhat relieved here. For context, this exam was open book, which means that students are allowed to bring any reference notes with them during the exam and are allowed the use of calculators. Now, I set that rule because it's more realistic. In the real world, we pretty much always have access to reference materials to look up information or calculators to help calculations. And I want my exams to be a closer reflection to the real world practice of science, not merely some memory test that rewards those who can parrot out facts and figures they learned in class. In this way, our calculators are just a tool, our reference materials are a tool, but shouldn't we also really extend this to ChatGPT then? In the real world, one could always use ChatGPT as well. So should our students be allowed to use this AI in their finals? This video establishes that if a student relied solely on ChatGPT to take at least my exam, that would be a bad strategy, since they would end up with a worse than median grade, worse than the typical student. However, as this algorithm improves as well as its competitors, there may be a point where these AIs can ace our exams. What do we do then? Now, I could try to outsmart the AI and be more devious in my questions, but in the end, that's an arms race that I'll never be able to win. And if everybody aces the exam using ChatGPT or something else, then the students really haven't learned anything except how to copy and paste. For me, then, ChatGPT is really a different beast than merely allowing open books in an exam. Now, of course, we could guard against this. We can walk around the room and check they're not using some kind of AI system on their laptop when they're taking the exam. But what do we do about homeworks or take-home exams, other assignments that influence their grade? Perhaps in the end, we'll need to use some kind of AI detector, discrimination tools that assess the probability that answers were produced by these tools, similar to the kind of plagiarism tools that already exist for comparing student answers. But here again, one might worry about an AI arms race. In the longer run, ChatGPT and its successors will pose a challenge to educators about what we want to teach our students. What should they really be learning? How should they interact with online tools? And how do we assess as students? If you are presently or have been a student or an educator, please do let me know your thoughts on this topic down below in the comment section. I really want to hear from you. Look, hopefully together we can continue to nurture curiosity and innovation to provide our students with the skills needed to succeed, whilst also offering a fair academic environment. Challenges for sure, but challenges we have to face. So until next time, stay thoughtful and stay curious.
Okay, so some of the questions to ask about the evolving technologies, this is for you as students. You can ask these questions, and I'm not going to read all them out because I'm pretty sure all of you can actually read them, just to get at some of them. What biases do they contain? Do you think that it's a game changer that may seem to believe it is? Now, what do tools like this mean for the future of education and work? What questions do you have about these tools? Now, before I get onto my last slide, and I want to share this with you. Last year, I unfortunately discovered that I had cancer. So I went up to my oncologist down in Sandton, in Johannesburg. And he was curious about ChatGPT-3. And so I introduced him to it, and we got chatting about it. And I can assure you, without fail, every month I get a call from him about stuff that he is finding useful and beneficial to his practice. And this is an oncologist, and he is right on top of the game. He is finding it absolutely fascinating, and he's introduced all of his patients onto it to get explanations for simple things, and he guides them through the process. So it is an extremely powerful machine. And to conclude my presentation, we need to keep in mind individuals like Charles Darwin, who spoke about only the fittest will survive in The Origin of Species. It's just the fittest will survive. We know that Thomas Kuhn had spoke about changes in paradigm shifts. We now have a paradigm shift. We are confronted with ChatGPT-3. It's going to change the way we do work. It's going to change the way academics do work. We've got to rethink the way we teach, the way we learn, the way we assess, and the way we go, rather than rejecting this. There are those that will be apocalyptic about the future and will say simply just ban all of this stuff. You know, it's not going to happen. Believe me, that's like putting your head in the sand and hoping the problem is going to go away. It is not a problem. It's here to stay. And I'd like to recommend to you a fantastic book by Yuval Harari, one of the most brilliant historians of our time, his book called Sapiens, where he talks about the rise of AI in our time, the future of the planet, as Nelson Mandela and Buckminster Fuller had mentioned, is going to be determined in our time. AI is here to stay. So I encourage you to use it. So I open the floor now to any questions that you might have pertaining to this. Remember that this was just an introduction, to my session, but you can have any other things. Colleen, over to you.
That is just wonderful. And I want to just mention that the example I've given to my students who've been interested, who've shown an interest, is that the issue now is the integrity of how we use it. So to me, if you go into ChatGPT and you say to it, write an abstract on the use of a particular tool in a particular surgical intervention, and it writes it, and you take that abstract and you use it, that is unethical. Right. It shows poor scientific integrity. Right. But if you have written an abstract and you just think it needs something else, or it's 500 words and you've been given a limit of 350 words, you say to the ChatGPT, as a scientist, reword the following, and you put your intellectual material in there and it rewords it. That is using the tool to improve what you're doing. Absolutely. And that is like having a really good secretary who, like for centuries now, people have had good secretaries who just reword your stuff, or using Grammarly, or using any of those other tools. So it's a matter of using this with integrity. And it's so much fun. If you want to get into it, I mean, what I now do with my birthday cards is, instead of going out to buy an expensive birthday card, I just get an ordinary blank card and I ask ChatGPT, write a birthday poem, make it rhyme, and these are the things that I would like to recall in and then it writes this beautiful poem and I sign it off as my friend ChatGPT. ChatGPT. Correct. I always acknowledge it because my friends know I'm no poet, but I can have anything from a fun rhyme to a sonnet. It's just such a wonderful tool. And writing letters, it's just amazing. But I don't want to take too much of your time. Are there any questions from the floor on how to use ChatGPT?
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Hi, go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, just a quick question. Well, a question or observation. I don't know how we look at it, but what would you say, Professor? What would you say about persons who think that the use of ChatGPT, among other things, would tend to eat away at our creativity? Just my thoughts. What would you say about that? What would be your response? Meaning that we're not necessarily creating new content, so to speak, but we're relying, for example, if I'm to use the example that, or cite the example that Professor Colleen just raised about using it to improve what you've already written. Where does the creativity comes in terms of our own ability, relying on our gray matter, so to speak, delving deep, digging deep within yourself to eke out, something of substance? What would your response be to that?
Yeah, look, I'm of the view that it is very hard to duplicate human creativity. You can't do that. It's just not possible. Now, Margaret Bowden, one of the big writers, sorry, I'm throwing names at you. I apologize for that. One of the big writers in artificial intelligence, she'll argue about machine creativity. She speaks at length about it. Now, we do know about the gentleman, Alan Turing, you know, absolute genius, who talked about machine creativity and so on. So I'm saying this, use it as a tool. It is a tool. You create the idea, you create the structure. And if you want to look at what other possibilities are there, because we are all limited by our experience and our geography and our fields, etc., etc. For example, I was writing a paper yesterday about talent. You know, I'm a musician. So I'm writing about talent. And I wrote this lovely, I thought it was a lovely essay, up until I did some searches on talent, and I didn't realize this is so well researched in psychology. It is extensively researched in psychology. And there was stuff that I picked up in psychology that I would have never dreamt of. And that just expanded my frame of reference, and it informed me. So I think I would use it to enhance my creativity. It cannot duplicate, it can't be creative for me. I would use it as a tool to help generate ideas for me, to give me ideas. When I'm stuck for ideas, like what we call typically as a writer's block, you reach a writer's block. And then you might find, I can't go any further with this. I need something else. Put it in and see what comes up, and you will be prompted by these ideas, and this happens to you. So I would say on the creative front, I won't say it is not creative, because it's hard to say that a machine is not creative. From a machine's perspective, it's being creative because it's giving you different possibilities. But creativity, as we understand it as a human condition, that's going to be something different. That's something. Human creativity is different from language creativity, from machine creativity. It's a completely different kind of creativity. Now, here we go back, and I'm going to give you the simple example. To the example of Deep Blue. You know what Deep Blue is? I'm pretty sure. It was this great computer that was tasked with competing against Bobby Fischer and Garry Kasparov, the great chess players of all times. The first few games, Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer had beaten the computer. Yes, they beat it. But after the computer had learned their moves and the way of playing, they started to beat Garry Fischer because they started to learn how they think and how they work. So I wouldn't dismiss it completely. I would say use it for now as a tool, but use it cautiously. Use it cautiously. You know, I would say I could take something generated by the computer, a piece of music, and applying my music sensibility. Remember, I'm a musician. Applying my knowledge of music, and I know what works for an audience, I can make it sound musical and convincing to an audience. But if I get the computer to generate it as music, it'll come out just as garbage. It's like, man, that's terrible stuff. It just sounds horrible. That's it, because I know what to use. So that's what I would say. So I don't know if I've quite answered your question, sir, but that's my attempt for now.
Yeah, certainly, Professor. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, there is another question in the chat that I think we should address. It's says that this person's concerned that it seems to discourage critical thinking required in academia. I don't think it will do that unless people are just plagiarizing it.
Exactly.
I think what it's going to do is, if you are asking it to broaden your horizons like you did with your talent paper, it's actually going to improve your critical thinking. I think the importance is to teach the ethical use of this, and also to encourage the critical thinking. And I was up at the University of Zululand last week, and I asked the question about how they are dealing with ChatGPT and other AI, and they said they're actually using it to teach critical thinking, because the AI can come up with rubbish. And it does. And sometimes well, I heard the story from Prof. Heft yesterday. Some attorney somewhere asked about an argument in a case, and he presented this argument believing that AI was giving him truth. And actually, when they went back to it, it had made up all sorts of things, because on the internet, there's a lot of garbage too, and the AI doesn't discern information. Yeah, so to me, the tool, I would use it to extend my creativity, and then to edit my own intellectual property. But copying and pasting is plagiarism no matter what you say.
Exactly.
And also what I would encourage is if I use a framework that has come from ChatGPT, for example, if I say, what would a good chapter look like? And I use that chapter, I would say chapter outline was derived with the use of ChatGPT. You just
Correct.
have to be completely ethical, show your own scientific integrity, and just be honest and use it to improve. And this is going to be a soft skill of the future.
It is.
People are going to have to be able to do that. If you want to get a job, you're going to have to be able to adapt to these things, because things are now going to start flying at us so fast. And if you can't adapt, you will die. I'll take one more question because we have reached 4:30. Any comments, questions?
Also criticism. If there's anything that you want to
Yes.
critique my president, I'd love to hear that. You know, if you think things were, it helps me to improve my presentation.
Chats, we have spoken about you doing a follow-up because you were scheduled to do the next 2 weeks, and I brought you a week earlier because Prof. Hefters had to travel and he was due this week.
No problem.
I think that this is such a good topic, and you have mentioned that you can show us how you can use this to do literature reviews. So and articles. So maybe within the next 2 weeks, you and I will discuss it and cover that with the students. So
Yeah,
thank you, everybody. Yeah.
I would love to show you some of the tools that I use, so you
Love
can
to.
decide whether you want to use the tools or not, and it's up to you.
Absolutely. I think we've all got to move ahead, and I've always seen you as my lighthouse as to where things are going.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Colleen. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for presenting.
Antoinette posted something. I just wanted to read it quickly. Oh, my good colleague
okay.
is there somewhere in the chat. I'm trying to read what she said.
I can't see anything else in the chat. Antoinette, did you have anything to say?
Just thank you for an awesome talk as always.
Oh, thanks, Antoinette. Thank you. Sweet of you. Great.
Right, thank you, and we'll be in touch soon. Thanks everybody for
Colleen,
attending.
thank you everyone for attending. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.